Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a bit since I recorded a video of any kind. I've been on a very short content break. Not necessarily because I needed one at all. It was mainly because obviously we've had a bunch of days without playoff hockey, so there hasn't really been a whole lot to talk about. But today is Monday, June 2nd. It is 7:30 p.m. The Stanley Cup Final starts in just over 48 hours exactly. 48 and a half hours if you want to get technical. So, considering there's no other time for me to record this video before the game, and I'll get into that in a second, I have to do it now. And I'm excited to do it. I've been taking the last few days to gather my thoughts, think about this matchup, and get ready to do this video and talk about it, because obviously as an Oilers fan and a diehard at that, this is the most excited I've been about this team in my entire life, to be quite honest with you. And we'll do some comparisons to last year's Cup Final team, but I think we can all agree, whether you're an Oilers fan or not, this year does feel different, at least to some degree, as far as like the team, feeling a bit more mature, feeling a little bit more complete. I think we can all kind of agree that this Edmonton group has come a long way. So anyways, what I was saying, and I mentioned this on my TikTok, which if you're not from my TikTok, the link to my TikTok is in the description below if you want to check that out. My videos there are pretty much exactly the same as the ones you're watching right now, just shorter. But I'm going to Buffalo tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be in Buffalo for, well, essentially until the midday of Thursday. So I'm going to be in Buffalo for game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Now, you don't even need to say anything. I don't love this. Believe me, I don't love this. So I'm going to Buffalo for a concert. The concert is tomorrow night. And then we're spending a day there the next day to, do shopping and stuff like that. And then we come back Thursday. So don't worry, I will be in my hotel room in front of the TV or my laptop, whatever it is, to watch the game 1. There's no chance I'm not going to be watching every single second of that game. So that's not my worry. My worry is that for the last, I think, 4 years, I have never watched an Oilers playoff game outside of my house. There's actually 2 superstitions I have with the Oilers. The first is anytime that I've ever watched a game where my friends have been over for, even if it's just the first period, if they come over to watch the game, they will not win. So one of my superstitions is I don't watch the games with friends, only my dad. The other superstition is I like to watch the games on my couch, in front of my TV, in my living room, every game. Unfortunately, that is not possible. The trip that I'm going on for these 3 days, we planned it well in advance. The playoffs hadn't even started yet when we booked this hotel, when we made all these arrangements. So there was obviously no way of, I couldn't have said to people, hey guys, I couldn't have said to my girlfriend, hey, I can't go on this trip to Buffalo with you because the Oilers might be in the Stanley Cup Final, because then I would look like a fool if the Oilers didn't make it to the final. So obviously, we booked the trip. It lines up with game 1. Luckily, I'm only there for game 1. So game 2, I will be back at home, and every other game for the rest of the series after that. We're just missing the first one. With that said, I will still be doing my TikTok video, my post-game recaps that I do for all Oilers games on TikTok. Unfortunately, my YouTube video won't be out probably until Friday, maybe Thursday night. It could be out Thursday night, but it won't be out right after the game. So I guess that's just something to keep in mind. But the TikTok video I will still post. I'm going to probably bring my little portable microphone that I use for my TikToks. That way I can still record it with the regular and same quality that I do. I'll just record it in the hotel room and upload it as per usual. That took up a good 5 minutes. I do expect this to be my longest video. I don't think anyone will really have an issue with that. It's obviously the final series of the playoffs. It's the most important series for this Oilers team, and I'm really excited. I'm also very nervous. Before I get into any numbers or stats or any of that stuff, let's just talk about it. In the summer, I was telling my friends I was so convinced that this Oilers team was going to be back in the Stanley Cup Final. All summer long, I told them, Edmonton will be back. I know we're going to be back. And then the season came around, and, you know, the Oilers weren't really playing like a team that was hungry for a Stanley Cup. They just didn't have a great regular season. Not as great of a regular season as I would have liked them to have following a Stanley Cup loss. And, you know, Stuart Skinner wasn't playing great throughout the regular season. A lot of injuries. And I started to lose some confidence in the team, you know, going back. Fast forward to last week, and Edmonton advances to the Stanley Cup Final for the second straight year. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, we actually did it. Like, they've actually managed to get back to the Stanley Cup Final. Now, this is leaving my heart open to heartbreak for the second year in a row. Because I feel like in 31 situations, I would be extremely confident that this Oilers team is going to win the Stanley Cup this year. And that's, or I guess not 31 because they can't play teams in the West. In 15 situations, I would have been ridiculously confident in Edmonton's ability to win the Stanley Cup had they gone back-to-back. The one situation where I wouldn't be overly confident is the case we're in right now, having to play the Florida Panthers again. Now, with that said, I wouldn't have had it any other way. The Florida Panthers are the best team in the NHL, not just because they're the reigning Stanley Cup champions. They genuinely don't have a weakness. To beat the Florida Panthers, you just need to be better, plain and simple. That's all it is. But, with that said, I do think that Edmonton getting back here and having to play the Florida Panthers is a massive motivator for this team. There are a lot of new faces, but for the most part, a lot of the guys on this group were here last year. They lost last year. They're devastated about last year, and they lost at the hands of the Florida Panthers. They have a chance to get revenge and redeem themselves for what was a heartbreaking Game 7 loss last year. And that's one of the craziest things about this, is Edmonton and Florida went to Game 7 last year. This Edmonton team this year is significantly better than last year, and I'd argue this Florida team is also better than last year. It's hard to be significantly better than last year's Florida team because of how good they were last year. I'm not trying to downplay how good they are. I'm just saying, like, this Oilers group and Florida group are better than they were their counterparts from last year. And they already went to 7. So what is that, like, what's going to happen? Who knows? So I'm nervous. I am nervous. I am going to be absolutely devastated if Edmonton isn't able to get the job done this year. I'll put that out there. I will be vulnerable. I try not to be biased. Well, when I first started making videos on TikTok, my plan was not to be biased. As time has gone on, I've embraced being an Oilers fan. Not that I ever had an issue with being an Oilers fan. I made it clear from the start that I was an Oilers fan. But I noticed like more engagement when I was passionate about Edmonton, so I started to do it more often. And I still try to take an unbiased look at Edmonton, even though I love that team and they're my team. I'll be vulnerable. I'm nervous, and I will be devastated if we lose again. You guys don't understand, man. There's nothing more in life that I want than to watch this team win a Stanley Cup. It is my dream. Like, hockey is my passion. I love this sport. I love this team. I love pretty much every guy on this team. Like, these guys have created so many great moments for me as a fan. last year's cup run, like, that was amazing. Even though it didn't end the way we wanted, it was amazing to watch, and I was so grateful for it despite not getting what we wanted. And to be able to get that opportunity to make it all worth it by winning this year is unbelievable. And I just really hope that they do it. I'm just trying to get all of the biased, like, opinionated stuff out of the way before we dive into the numbers and things of that nature. So I'm just trying to rack my mind with stuff. I will give you guys my prediction before I dive into the numbers, as I always do. I'm just trying to make sure I really should start writing, like, jot notes down on a piece of paper or something and leaving it in front of me so that I don't forget things. I find with my TikTok videos, I tend to forget stuff more often, and then after I upload the video, I think to myself, shit, I wanted to say this, and I forgot. With YouTube, I haven't really had that issue. I feel like I prepare myself for my YouTube videos a little bit more. But yeah, I don't know. All I can really say is I'm extremely excited for what might happen in 2 weeks. I'm also extremely nervous for what might happen in about 2 weeks. It can either be the best day of my life or arguably the second worst day, maybe the worst. The worst day of my life is Game 7 of last year. I will say that easily. I guess maybe that goes to show that I've had a pretty good life, I guess. Like, the fact that a Game 7 loss in the finals is the worst thing that's ever happened. Like, it's not actually, but, like, it was pretty fucking bad. But I'm excited about this Oilers team. It really does feel different to me this year, and I know, like, that's kind of the stereotypical statement to say, more so in Leafs land, not so much in Edmonton land, but it feels different, man. Like, this group, I've seen so much growth and maturity from this group that we didn't see last year. This team has just been so much better in so many ways, in my opinion, and it's been a pleasure to watch throughout these 3 rounds so far. I don't really have anything else to say from an opinionated perspective. I just want to dive into the stats, the line matchups, what we always kind of do with these videos. If you watched my Dallas-Edmonton series preview video, you will remember that I utilized some statistics from a Instagram page called Golden Era Hockey. The link to their account is in the description below. I highly recommend checking them out. I will be utilizing their breakdown again for this series. I can't remember exactly every number or statistic that from that Dallas-Edmonton breakdown, so to be completely honest with you, I can't tell you guys how accurate it ended up being off the top of my head. But like I've said in the past, advanced statistics, they do more positive than sometimes people, like, let on. I think there's a lot of people who just don't like advanced stats, and I understand that. I think the best way to approach hockey is advanced stats mixed with your eye test. Don't just base your whole opinion on advanced stats. If you see an advanced stat that says that one player is really, really good, watch them play 10 games. And if you don't think that advanced stat is truthful, then you know what? You can argue that point. But I'm going to be using those again. I do have the Daily Faceoff preview for the series article pulled up just for some really quick stat grabs. I did read the article. Again, it will be in the description below as well, so you guys can check out that article if you so please. But let's start with the prediction, and then we'll dive into everything. What we're going to cover in this video, we're going to do the offensive groups, the defensive groups, goaltending, special teams, and what I think the X factors in the series are. And hopefully we can look back on this video in a couple weeks, or I guess... Yeah, it's like 3 weeks, actually. I think Game 7 is June 20th in the event that we need Game 7. So that's a ways away. That is 18 days away. So just under 3 weeks. But regardless, hopefully we can look back on this video and I don't need to make an end of season crying video. But stay tuned just in case. Knock on wood. I don't know if you guys could have heard that, but I knocked on my wooden desk. All right. My prediction for this series, I have jumped back and forth between so many different things over the last few days. We're the underdogs. I've rode with the Oilers the whole way through. I didn't pick them to win the Stanley Cup in my bracket. But after we beat LA, I changed my whole opinion. And I'm going to stick with it. I have the Oilers winning this series in a poetic Game 7. In Edmonton, at Rogers Place in front of the best fans in the world, Oilers win the Stanley Cup in Game 7. That's my prediction. All the Florida Panthers fans, you guys can type away in the comments. I actually don't really get that many comments, especially not from opposing teams' fans. But if any Panthers fans watch this, I'm not discrediting your team. I literally said you guys are the best team in the world at the start of this video. It's just the truth. That doesn't mean you can't lose. It also doesn't mean that you are gonna lose. The Panthers are a fucking good team. And let me just say it before we continue. I could see Edmonton winning, like I said about the Dallas series, I could see the Oilers winning this thing in 5, 6, or 7 games. I can also see the Panthers winning this thing in 5, 6, or 7 games. I will say, I don't really see a world where either of these teams sweeps the other. I will say that. I do think both teams are at least going to win a game. I also do think it's pretty unlikely that we do see either matchup end in 5. I think 6 or 7 games is almost guaranteed, but 5 games is very possible. One thing about this Oilers team this year is the Oilers have been very good at winning and closing out series. They have not lost a game yet in clinching scenarios. They're 3-0. They were up 3-2 against the Kings. They won. They were up 3-1 against Vegas. They won in 5. They were up 3-1 against Dallas. They won in 5. Florida, I am 99% sure. Actually, no, that is incorrect. They are, I guess, 2 for 4, I guess, because they would have beaten Tampa when they were up 3-1. They lost against the Leafs when they were, or I guess it would be 2-5, actually. 3-5. Fuck, I have no idea. All I know is they lost against the Leafs when it was 3-2. Then they won Game 7. So they lost one series clinching game. And then they were up 3-0 against the Hurricanes. They lost that game and then won the following game. So they actually don't have a great record in clinching games in these series so far. The Oilers are undefeated in games where they have a chance to advance. So I am inclined, based on that, if there is any possibility where the Edmonton Oilers are up 3-1 or 3-2 in this series, I would like to believe that they will continue that mature game and find a way to close the series out. No funny business. Now, with that said, even though the standings, the Oilers have played 3 of the top 6 teams in the NHL from the regular season, the Panthers are the best team they will have to play in these playoffs so far. So it's a different story. No matter what, it's a different story. So that was my prediction. Oilers in 7. But I could see both teams winning in 5, 6, or 7 games. Moving on to, we'll pull up the forward lines. They'll be on the top corners as per usual. Now, one thing to mention is Connor Brown is not listed on the Oilers lineup in the photo that is on the screen right now. That is because he didn't play the last game and Daily Faceoff they don't have lines yet to update it with. Connor Brown will be playing in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. I already know where he is going to be playing for the most part, so I can just fill him into the spot that he is supposed to be in. So starting off with the first lines of both teams, we've got on the Oilers, of course, Connor McDavid with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Corey Perry. Now, obviously, the number one thing that I think a lot of people have been talking about with this Oilers group coming into the finals is the absence of Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman was very unfortunately injured in Game 4 against the Dallas Stars. I would imagine it's a wrist injury, maybe a shoulder, but I think it's wrist. He was clipped by Mason Marchment and is no longer available for Edmonton the rest of the postseason. He will not be playing another game. So the Oilers don't have a choice but to move forward without him. Now, with that said, Edmonton has essentially played 2 games without Hyman. He got injured fairly early on into Game 4. They practically played the whole game without him. They're 2-0 without him. They've played great. And my way of looking at it is, yes, Hyman is a great player. He's been extremely physical for Edmonton. He's got a goal-scoring touch. He's fantastic. I don't think if we lose this series, I'm going to come on here and tell you guys, oh, guys, we lost because we didn't have Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman is a great player, and he's a great role, supporting cast member and stuff, but he's not, a game breaker, if you know what I mean. So I don't want Oilers fans to use the absence of Hyman as an excuse if we lose this series. it's just a really unfortunate situation, and I definitely like our chances more if we had Hyman, but that's just the way you go. You got to roll with it, guys. We didn't have Matthias Ekholm for essentially 3 playoff rounds. He played Game 5 of the Dallas series. That was his first playoff game. Ekholm, in my opinion, if you asked me before the playoffs to list the most valuable Oilers, I would go McDavid and Draisaitl are like a 1A, 1B. Bouchard is 3 or 2. Nuge, Ekholm, Hyman. So, in my opinion, I think Ekholm is more valuable to the Oilers team just because there's only 6 defensemen, and Ekholm is our best defender. Hyman is one of 12 forwards. He's in our top 5 forwards, no question about it, but the way that the Oilers have played in the playoffs this year with that next man up mentality and the offensive prowess we've seen throughout this whole lineup, I'd like to think that someone is going to be able to step into Hyman's shoes in these finals. And this group has looked so motivated this year that I feel like so many guys are chomping at the bit to be that guy. And that's amazing. So anyways, that's the first line in Edmonton. Looking at Florida, it's Barkov with Rodriguez and Reinhart. A very good first line in Florida, of course. Now, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins this year has, let me just pull it up, 18 points. So Nuge is the 3rd highest scoring forward on the Edmonton Oilers this year. He has more points. He would be the leading forward in points on the Edmonton Oilers. Corey Perry has 10 points. I believe so does Evan Rodriguez. He might have 11. I have the number right here. Rodriguez has 11 points. So he's got 1 more point than Corey Perry. So just in my opinion, and just looking at the numbers, based on the consistency throughout, Edmonton's first line is better. McDavid's got 26 points as opposed to Barkov's 17. Nuge has 18 points in comparison to Reinhart's, let me find him really quick, why can't I? 13. So Nuge is outscoring Reinhart, McDavid's outscoring Barkov, Rodriguez is outscoring Perry by 1 point. So, do with that information what you will. Moving on to the second lines, we have Draisaitl with Kapanen and Kane. This was a very newly formed line. Evander Kane got a boost in the lineup after Hyman's injury. I've been pleasantly surprised with Kasperi Kapanen's play this playoffs. Evander Kane has looked infinitely better than he did last year. He is so much healthier, it's not even funny. And I do think he is going to be a big piece in any success that Edmonton has against the Panthers because he plays the style of hockey that Florida likes to play, which is that physical, pest-like hockey. So when comparing, Draisaitl is outscoring Bennett. Draisaitl has 24 points. Sam Bennett has 16. Bennett is Florida's 2nd highest scoring forward this year. He's having a great postseason. Matthew Tkachuk is sitting at 16 points. Same with Bennett, so he's been phenomenal. And then Carter Verhaeghe, who's just lethal, has 14 points. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Edmonton's second line is better. I do think Florida has the better second line here. At least consistency throughout. However, one of the interesting things that I'm curious to see in this series is who does Draisaitl go up against? Because Draisaitl has shut down Mikko Rantanen and Jack Eichel in these playoffs so far. He has been phenomenal defensively. I'm curious to see what assignment he gets in this series. Is he just tasked with shutting down the second line of Florida? Do they maybe put him out against Barkov? Do they maybe put him out against the amazing third line the Panthers have? It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now, Daily Faceoff does have Janmark, Arvidsson, and Podkolzin listed as the third line in Edmonton. I feel like they will end up being the 4th line. The third line for the majority of the postseason has been centered by Adam Henrique. Henrique, in this case, it's Henrique with Skinner and Frederic. Skinner is probably the odd man out with Brown returning for Game 1. So I'm going to go with Henrique, Brown, and Frederic up against the third line of Lundell, Luosterainen, and Marchand. Now, we don't need to spend any time on this. Florida, this is the best third line in the NHL. I've talked about this third line in my TikToks, on my YouTube channel before. This third line is unbelievably good. And and it was good before Marchand got there. Marchand getting there just took it to a whole nother level. This third line is better. And then comparing the 4th lines, like I just said, Janmark with Podkolzin and Arvidsson, I do think that fourth line is better than Nosek, Boquist, and Gadjevich. Now, Greer also could sub in for Boquist, but either way, I think Edmonton's fourth line is better. So just looking at this like collectively, they both go 2 for 4 in my opinion. I think Edmonton has the better first line and fourth line, and Florida's got the better middle six, second and third lines. With that said, though, we're going to quickly pull up the 5-on-5 offense numbers from Golden Era. As you can see on the screen right now, the Panthers have the better goals for per 60. It is a somewhat small margin, but still, it's an increase. Edmonton has a higher expected goals for per 60 by quite a significant amount. High danger chances for Edmonton is favored. Edmonton averages a very slight difference in shots per 60, and they have a much higher quality of shots against. Or for, I guess, not against. So Edmonton's offense at 5-on-5, once again, like with Dallas, it has been better than Florida's. I think Edmonton, despite maybe on paper the lines not being better in some cases, they've gotten more production out of lines than Florida has throughout the lineup. So offensively, I'm going with the Edmonton Oilers. Moving into the defensive cores of both of these teams, we obviously have a very different look in Edmonton's D-core than we've had all postseason, as Mattias Ekholm is back, right back on that first pairing with Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse and Kulak, Wallman and Klingberg. So just pair by pair, Ekholm versus Bouchard, I actually think the first pairings are somewhat tied. Obviously, Forsling and Ekholm kind of both serve a similar purpose. They're supposed to be the shutdown guy on the first pairing. I do think Evan Bouchard is significantly better than Aaron Ekblad. Although Aaron Ekblad has had a really strong postseason, Bouchard is unbelievably good. He has been, in my opinion, the best defenseman on planet Earth since Game 3 of the first round. He has been unbelievably fantastic. So I'm going to give the first pairing here to Edmonton. Second pairing of Nurse and Kulak. Unfortunately, with this, Kulak has to play on his offside to play with Darnell Nurse, which is why I liked Stetcher being in the lineup, and it's part of the reason why when Hyman got injured, I was advocating heavily for the 11-7 because then you could keep Stetcher with Nurse and Kulak wouldn't have to play his offside. Although they actually didn't play too bad against Dallas in Game 5. I thought that was probably Kulak's worst game of the playoffs so far. He just had a rough one. I don't think he'll repeat that, hopefully. But the second pairing in Florida is better, in my opinion. Mikkola is better than Darnell Nurse, and Seth Jones has surprised me quite a bit these playoffs. I do think Kulak is a better shutdown guy, but they're kind of flipped. Mikkola is supposed to be more of the shutdown guy on this pairing. Jones and Nurse, the offensive guys, and then Kulak would also be the shutdown. But I'll give that second pairing to Florida. And hot take, I actually prefer Edmonton's third pairing, Wallman and Klingberg, over Schmidt and Kulikov. This pairing has been the biggest surprise of the postseason for the Oilers so far. And one of the most important things about this pairing is it gives Edmonton a second pairing that's great at puck movement. Last year in the playoffs, the Oilers really only got efficient puck movement from their D-core or D pairings when it was Ekholm and Bouchard on the ice. But this year, it's with Bouchard or Wallman or Klingberg. And that's a huge difference, especially in comparison to the teams that Florida's had to play so far. Toronto doesn't really have good puck-moving defensemen. Tampa focuses on size more than puck movement, outside of like Hedman. And I would say Carolina, for the most part, they do have some good puck movers. I think Edmonton's D-core has a really good mix of great puck movers and also still playing that physical game of hockey. And I think that's why this D-core for for Edmonton is going to be a much different matchup for Florida in comparison to what they've had to deal with so far. With that said, I do think Florida still has the better D-core as far as consistency throughout. And if we look at the 5-on-5 defensive numbers, you can see them on the screen. It is easily in Florida's favor. They have the lower expected goals against. They allow a very, very minuscule amount, but less high danger chances against per 60. A very minuscule less, like they essentially both average 23 shots on net. We're getting into decimal numbers. And then they allow a pretty decent amount of like lower quality chances against. So Florida does in the stats and in my opinion, on paper, like consistency wise, they have the better D. This would not be the first series that Edmonton has played where the other team has the better D. LA and Vegas were the better defensive teams, and Edmonton had no issues. We'll go to special teams before goaltending. Special teams. Actually, I need to pull up the goaltending stats. I just realized that I haven't done that yet. Again, this would be the third fucking time that I have done this. I actually want to talk about Stuart Skinner's numbers from the more so after the start against LA. Well, actually, I guess we'll go with special teams first. My apologies, guys. My apologies. Special teams. So, the Oilers' penalty kill continues to be what I would say their biggest weakness is. However, the number one penalty killer that the Oilers have is Mattias Ekholm. And Ekholm hasn't played outside of Game 5 against Dallas. So, hopefully, with Ekholm back full-time, it will help us see an increase in Edmonton's penalty kill. That's what I'm really banking on in this series. However, Edmonton's penalty kill has been a weakness for them every series so far, and it hasn't been the bane of their existence yet. Now, Florida, they have a much lower expected penalty kill goals against. The expected penalty kill goals against is also lower. They allow many less shots against on the PK, but Edmonton's power play is better in every stat. So you can see Edmonton has the better power play. Florida's got the better penalty kill. What will win out in the end? We'll have to find out. But if we pull up the actual percentages, Florida has just over a 23% power play. Edmonton has a 30% power play. Florida has a just under an 88% penalty kill. Edmonton has a 66% penalty kill. Not good. But again, these are smaller sample sizes with it just being the playoffs. And again, Ekholm is back. So you'd like to hope that he can make a positive impact on that penalty kill. Looking at Dallas's power play, Dallas had a 32% power play in the playoffs, which is higher than Edmonton's and significantly higher than Florida's. And Edmonton's penalty kill was actually fine against Dallas outside of that first game. So hopefully a somewhat lackluster Florida power play can cancel out a lackluster Edmonton penalty kill. Hopefully. And then for the goaltenders. So Stuart Skinner, his entire playoff stats, including the first two games against LA, we are looking at a 2.53 goals against average and a 904 save percentage. So not bad, actually. He's improved his numbers drastically. But what I wanted to bring up is ever since Pickard got injured in Game 2 against Vegas, so essentially from Game 3 against Vegas and onwards, Stuart Skinner has had a 1.73 goals against average and a 931 save percentage, which is absolutely incredible. If there is any world where Stuart Skinner can maintain that level of play in the finals, the Oilers have a much, much better chance of winning the Stanley Cup this year. I'm not saying they're I'm not guaranteeing a win if he plays that way, but it increases their chances significantly. If we get something a little more similar to LA Stuart Skinner, the Oilers will lose the Stanley Cup in 5 games maximum. So let's hope we get good Stuart Skinner. As for Sergei Bobrovsky, now unfortunately I don't have his statistics pulled up for the last small sample size like I did with Stuart Skinner, but looking at Bob's playoff stats the whole way through, he's bolstering a 2.11 goals against average and the 912 save percentage. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Oilers have the better goaltender here. Obviously, in that small sample size, Stuart Skinner has better numbers than Bobrovsky in a larger sample size, but Bobrovsky's the better goalie. It's not particularly close. With that said, the Oilers have had no issue exposing and picking apart goaltenders. Their most true test so far in these playoffs has been Darcy Kuemper, and they still didn't have that much of an issue against him. They made Ottinger look like a child, and Adin Hill was an absolute disaster. So I'd like to think that Edmonton's scoring prowess is still going to come out strong, even against, the best goaltender they've had to face so far in these playoffs, and arguably the best D-core they've had to play. That's something you could argue if you wanted to. I don't know if I'd say that easily. But yeah. Now let's dive into some X factors before we close out this video. The biggest X factor for the Edmonton Oilers, in my opinion, is going to once again be Stuart Skinner. He was my biggest X factor for the series against Dallas. He's going to have to be great again for Edmonton to have a better chance of winning. McDavid and Draisaitl, also X factors. I wouldn't say with confidence that McDavid and Draisaitl have been the MVPs of any of these series that Edmonton has won so far, which is a good thing. Edmonton has not been winning these series on the backs of McDavid and Draisaitl. It has been a team effort, a collaborative effort, which is what you want out of a team that is contending for a Stanley Cup. But this right here is the series where McDavid and Draisaitl need to do everything they can. They need to empty the tank, and they need to get the job done because they are so much healthier this year than they were last year. They have so much energy left because they haven't been busting their balls to get this team this far. This is the time for them to take over a series and cruise Edmonton to 4 wins before they lose 4. That's all it takes. It's so much simpler when you say it out loud, but they need to dial in. And then I would say another big X factor in this series is whoever is on that first line in Hyman's spot, whether it's Corey Perry or Connor Brown is a guy that I think would work well. Being able to replicate Hyman's level of play with the net front presence and the forecheck and the physicality, like if you can replicate that to half of the degree of what Hyman was providing, that is a huge deal for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, moving into Florida's X factors, I think, again, Bobrovsky's a huge X factor. If Bobrovsky can play the way he played in games 1 to 3 and 7 of the finals last year, Florida's chances increase exponentially. Another big X factor is that third line. Again, that's a huge, that's a line matchup that Florida wins in pretty much every series. So I think that's another big piece for them this year. And then I would say that Barkov's ability to shut down either McDavid or Draisaitl, whoever he gets matched up against, if his line is able to do that effectively, that will also significantly increase Florida's chances to get the job done once again. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'll see you guys here on the YouTube probably Thursday night or Friday afternoon /morning/afternoon. It depends. I have a tattoo appointment on Friday, so that kind of throws a wrench right in the middle of the day. So the video will either come out before or after that. It will hopefully come out before Game 2 on Friday night, though. I will be posting TikToks more regularly, as always. Link is in the description, as always. Everyone take a deep breath. Believe in this team. Believe in this group. Oilers in 7. This is it, boys. I could feel it in my veins. Knock on wood. But this just feels different. This group feels more mature. They look very focused, very motivated. And that's a very, very, very good thing to be able to say as we move into the Stanley Cup Final. A rematch of 2024. The scriptwriters couldn't have put it together any better. Let's go Oilers, baby.